Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and we discuss the events in the Church of Scientology as reported on Tony's Substack. Hey, Tony, welcome back.
Hello, Chris. Good to be back.
Yeah, I got some stuff. This was a legal, not a legal week. This was kind of a PR week. There was some interesting stuff, a lot of UK stuff this week. Starting with something I found interesting. That you had an article about a Spanish translation that was done of a St. Hill promotional video. Did I get that right?
Yeah, so we get these promotional videos every once in a while. They're always interesting. Sometimes they're about the free wins. Sometimes they're about specific orgs. But this time it was not only St. Hill, which I can't remember the last time we saw a promotional video about St. Hill, but they invite us inside and we get to see some things. There's a tea going on at the monkey room, the famous monkey room.
Right.
I don't remember videos from inside the monkey room before. So that's just sort of fun for those of us that are curious about what goes on at Scientology. But also it's all in Spanish and it was a song. Basically the translation was, you going to OT, basically. You go OT. And so I got a little help on the translation. And it was, I don't know that, it was basically just a promotional video trying to get people excited about coming to St. Hill to do their intermediate OT levels. You can only do like 3, 4, and 5 there or something. If you go higher than that, you got to go to Flag, right, in Florida. Yep. But you can do 3, 4, and 5 at St. Hill. And this is not cheap. This is tens of thousands of dollars each. And it's interesting that it's focused on Spanish speakers, and they do flash some flags in there that there are people coming from Argentina and Mexico and Spain, places where they speak Spanish. So I thought that was interesting. That was a little different. Haven't seen that before. Little amateurish, very kind of poor on the sound quality in some places. This was definitely not a slick SMP production that Scientology has spent so much money on in recent years. So I just thought it was a fun glimpse inside. But you probably picked up some things that I didn't. What did you see in it?
Yeah, let me say a couple things here, because this is it's demonstrative of more of what's not there than what's there. And let me explain, because Scientology is a worldwide thing, and every one of their Sea Org bases is responsible for a geographic zone. And so the one we're talking about right now in St. Hill is responsible geographically for the United Kingdom, and that's it. They're not responsible for Argentina. That's actually the American St. Hill organization over in America that's responsible for that. These were all divvied out decades ago. But one of the things that Scientology does, they're in their desperation, the different individual organizations, is they're not getting enough public from their area, so they go reaching out to others and drawing from them. And this is where they step on each other's feet. And not to get all internal political with Scientology, but it's just so interesting to me that St. Hill, an English organization built and designed and run for England, is promoting with a Spanish speaker services at St. Hill. And they had to produce it themselves. You mentioned SMP wasn't involved in this. That's what's not there. SMP isn't producing any materials for these organizations to promote to their public. So we see these second-class level productions out of the orgs themselves, which tells us a little bit about how desperate they are for more people. And that's where I wanted to get with that. To me, that's what that says. And I find that
now you're reminding me also that when this is what's called an advanced org, what you're talking about, that once you get to the OT levels you can't get in your local city, you have to go to an advanced org, and then ultimately you have to go to the flag land base if you want to get OT 6 and 7, that kind of thing.
That's right.
And I remember when they opened a new advanced org in South Africa, and this was about 7 or 8 years ago or something like that, and they started advertising for it and immediately began advertising, hey, our prices are a little cheaper. and they were trying to get people from other parts of the world. And I remember thinking, yeah, I think we talked about it at that time, that this is not necessarily good for Scientology, for these orgs to be cutting each other's throats to try to get, because they're all so desperate now. It's all so weak. But yeah, that's a great point. I hadn't thought about that. That's a great observation about that video from St. Hill.
Yeah, it's pure desperation, and it's because there's no other reason they would do that, especially because international promotional facilities, SMP and Gold, there are hundreds of Sea Org members working at those outfits, and they can't make a promotional video for St. Hill, one of their 5 Sea Org bases. I mean, what are these people doing all day?
It's a great point, because if Scientology were doing well, we know it's not, but if Scientology were doing well and St. Hill was doing a ton of business, you wouldn't be able to get in if you were coming from Argentina or somebody. They'd say, no, go to your advanced org. We got too many people here from England.
That's right. That's right.
That's Mexico City is your advanced org. That's not open yet, but it's they're working on it.
Exactly. And this is also just as a point of information for people. Scientology staff go to war over this kind of thing, over these public. And that's where you'll get this. Oh no, we'll come to South Africa. We'll give you this, for the cost of flying here and the discount you'll get on services, it'll be cheaper for you who live in California to fly to South Africa than to drive down to LA and pay for the services there. That's how they would sell it, and they'd get away with it too, by the way. And there would be much gnashing of teeth and rending of garments. Let's put it that way, as to what goes on inside. Okay, now another story that was also kind of indicative in this direction was your article today on Tokyo Org.
Yeah, I always appreciate it when readers do something like this. I had a reader who's obviously an ex-Scientologist, has been out for a while, but they had been at the Tokyo Org, the original Tokyo Org, and so had some idea of the difference. And this is the Tokyo Ideal Org now, which was open a number of years ago. I can't remember exactly how many, but another one of these giant facilities that's supposed to. I mean, Miscavige sells it to them that give us your donations. We're going to build this Ideal Org, and then it's just going to do tons of business. And I think it was Paul Burkhart who was interviewed by Mike and Leah on the show and said that every one of these things costs like $25 million. So you spend like $25 million putting up, you buy this building, rehab it, put all this stuff in it. And then, Miscavige claims, okay, now it's going to be so busy. So then we go up later, years later, and they all look dead. And, a caveat, obviously, it depends on when this person went. They said it was about dinner time. Should be a pretty busy time for a Scientology org.
That's right.
And they made a good point that there's lots of street car traffic around it in that area, but not much foot traffic. And sent some photos, which what do we see? We see this really expensive, decked out public area in the first floor with the TV monitors ready to tell you the story of Scientology, and just a couple of people. So pretty consistent with what we've seen, that these things are really more about Dave's ego. It's about convincing wealthy people that things are succeeding, and they don't bring in a ton of people. So just another, more proof of that. And I just thank that reader for doing that. What did you see in it? Did you see something special?
Absolutely. And on this one, I'll actually throw the picture up here for folks, because I couldn't help but notice that half the lights in this building are turned off. And I just thought, yeah, booming. Yeah. All right. So Scientology Tokyo, not exactly taking off. Now, testimonials are a huge, huge, huge part of Scientology's success and promo. And you had a feature on a couple of these this week.
Yeah, for some reason, I've been getting more out of St. Hill lately. Maybe it's because Alex Barnes Ross keeps an eye on it, has been sending me some stuff. But these actually came from a couple different sources. One was Advanced Magazine had some testimonials from these people, OTs at St. Hill. Also a testimonial specifically from an OT5 at St. Hill, Alessandro Calcioli, who is married to Louisa Hodkin, who had just gotten a testimonial from a week and a half ago or so. And, Alessandro Calcioli is interesting because he is Neil Gaiman's nephew, part of that Gaiman family that's so into Scientology, except for Neil. He left in the 80s. So interesting to see Alessandro Calcioli himself singing the praises of OT5, and then these other folks who had done OT 3, 4, 5 at St. Hill. And of course, it's always the same, Chris. Of course, they're Scientologists. They have to make it sound like this is the most life-changing level they've ever been through. And then until the next one, then they have to pretend that's the most life-changing level of all time. And of course, they want you to think that it's the most amazing thing they've ever done without actually telling you anything about it. And so that's why I always have fun kind of, okay, well, they're saying this is what happens on OT5. Let me tell you what happens on OT5. And OT3, you learn you have these body thetans, you have to drive them away. OT4, you not only have to drive them away, you have to put them through rehab.
Yeah, that's right.
And then at OT5, it turns out you have even more, but they need to be woken up. I mean, just crazy. I mean, it's just thousands of dollars spent on these unseen, invisible entities clinging to you.
That's right.
And these folks have been through it, and they're holding up their certificates saying this is the best thing I ever did. So I don't know. It's always, to me, interesting to see. I mean, they're going to always do this. The question is, does this really sell it? And I guess I would ask you that when you're in, do those testimonials really whet your appetite?
Yes, they do. Yes, they absolutely do. When you're in a headspace where you believe that these things are possible and where this sort of spiritual expansion is sort of the order of the day, then you crave these kinds of things. They remind you and incentivize you because they remind you of your earlier euphoric moments from your own auditing. And auditing, make no doubt about it. I'm gonna summarize this real simple, but auditing is an addictive process of inducing euphoric moments in people, and they get all high and all blown out, and then Hubbard tells them, well, this is because your spirit is out of your body, see? And they go, oh my God, is that what it is? Well, then give me more. And that's how it goes. So the OT success stories from individuals are actually among the most prized of information, because you're always looking for some little nugget or kernel or bit you can sink your teeth into, because as a Scientologist that it's all confidential and they can't tell you what's really there. So yeah, that's kind of how it works, and it's very incentivizing for Scientologists.
Okay.
Yeah, they make a lot of money on those things, and that's one of the reasons it's all such explosive language. They really, it's purposeful. It's by design. Okay. Now, this was a weird one this week. This was a story about Tom Cruise and a lawsuit and a Hollywood madam, or what was this?
Well, Paul Baresi strikes again. Every few years he shows up and he has got a little tip from me, and we've done some fun stories together. This time he just messaged me and said, hey, I found a Tom Cruise. Somebody sued Tom Cruise in 2021 and nobody wrote about it. I said, well, I'm interested. So once he gave me the number of the lawsuit, I went and downloaded the documents myself, and yeah, it really happened. And it just got weirder and weirder the more I looked into it. The lawsuit was filed in September 2021 by a woman named Jody Baby Doll Gibson. And at one time, she was fairly well known. In 1999, she was arrested and then prosecuted as, this Hollywood madam that had like 300 women working for her. And they got a hold of her black book, and it had some big Hollywood names in it. And she really was supplying escorts to Hollywood stars. Heidi Fleiss, of course, is more well known, but Baby Doll claimed that Heidi Fleiss had actually started out working for her.
Yeah, so I thought that was a good point in there. It sold it.
Baby Doll went to prison for a couple years. She got out. She moved out to Yucca Valley, which is a desert town outside LA, and then just wrote books about what she had been through. Meantime, where does her nickname come from? Baby Doll. One of the stories she told was that it was because her mom loved this movie called Baby Doll. Well, her mom was Toby Gibson, and Toby Gibson was a talent agent who specialized in kids, helping kids get into commercials and TV and that kind of thing. And her claim to fame was that in either 1979 or 1980, either the fall of 79 or the spring of 80, when Tom Cruise was a senior in high school, Toby went to see this production of Guys and Dolls because she was representing the sister of one of the girls in the play. So that's why Toby happened to be in the audience that day at Glen River High School in New Jersey. And she saw Tom Cruise in Guys and Dolls, and she just thought, oh, this guy's great. And she approached him, introduced herself, and ended up signing him. And the story is that she's the one Toby Gibson is the one who convinced Tom to change his name from Thomas Mapother IV to Tom Cruise. And that she then got him his first two movie roles, a small part in Endless Love and a good part in Taps, both of which came out the next year, 1981.
Yep.
At that point, he moved out to Los Angeles and met Sean Penn, who told him to go to CAA. And that's when he got involved with CAA, Creative Artists Agency, and Paula Wagner, who became his producing partner for years and years. Okay, so that's how the Tom Cruise start is supposed to have happened. Well, apparently in 2016, Tom Cruise, Toby, by the way, had died in 2009. And then in 2016, Tom Cruise gave an interview, or, not even clear he gave it specifically for this book, but there was some statements by Tom Cruise in a book that came out that was a history of CAA. And there were just little bits and pieces about different artists and different agents and stuff. And there were 2 pages in this book, 400-page book, about how Tom Cruise got started at CAA. And it's kind of muddled. It's not clear. Like I said, it's not even clear that he sat down for an interview. But Tom Cruise said some things about crashing with Sean Penn in LA and Sean Penn telling him to go look up CAA. And that's how he got started with the agency. Well, this apparently just really flipped out Baby Doll. She was so upset because she read that and perceived it as Tom erasing her mother's contribution. So she starts sending emails to Tom's attorney, Bert Fields, the publisher of the book, demanding cease and desist, stop publishing this book. And then in September 2021, she actually files a lawsuit against Tom Cruise, accusing him of fraud and erasing her mother's contribution. Now, I went back and looked at what he actually said in that book, and he doesn't. He's not. It's not that he's erasing what Toby had done. He's just talking about what happened later. I just don't think this law.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's different. Two different things. Baby Doll was upset, clearly, but I don't see how this lawsuit could have really gone anywhere. I don't see how Tom Cruise committed fraud at all. But a couple of things happen that make this lawsuit even a little more notable. The first is that in her complaint, and she was representing herself, there was no attorney involved, and it looks like it. It's kind of an amateurish complaint she's put together. In the list of facts about, Toby Gibson saw him at a high school play and signed him up, and she has a point in there where she says that after Toby had signed Tom Cruise up, Tom Cruise then developed a relationship with Toby's nephew, John Doe 1, and that it was that nephew who convinced him to leave Toby's management and go to CAA. No more details. Doesn't say what kind of a relationship. But of course, Baby Doll must have known if this lawsuit had actually been reported on at the time, people would have perceived that this is another of these gay rumors about Tom Cruise, which I have to tell you, I think journalists who seriously cover Tom Cruise don't take these gay rumors very seriously. But this would have gone off like a bomb if people had covered it at the time, but nobody noticed, apparently. And now then the other thing that's interesting is that, so she filed it in September. She filed some additional documents in like October or November. Her first hearing was scheduled for January, 14th or 15th, something like that, in 2022, right? So a few months after she filed a lawsuit, her first date where she's supposed to be in court to talk to the judge about it is in January 2022. Well, a couple of weeks before that hearing, she died in her sleep. And so then the lawsuit just went nowhere. I tried to contact her husband to see if he had anything to say about the lawsuit and that accusation. I couldn't reach him. Um, and of course, the lawsuit was then dismissed with prejudice because she never showed up. She couldn't. She was dead. But very odd little lawsuit, and I just don't think it really would have gone anywhere. I don't think there was any proof that he was erasing Toby Gibson's contribution in that book. Now, there is a good question, and that is, it seems true that Toby Gibson signed him after seeing him at that high school play, but then eventually he went with CAA. I'm curious about that story. How did he end up leaving Toby Gibson's management? Did he do it in a way that harmed her? That's not a story I'm familiar with. I'm interested in that. So some interesting things that came out of it. And I want to thank Paul Baresi again for thinking of me because he knew I might be interested, and I definitely was. No real Scientology connection, but still, it's interesting to hear that somebody was suing, that a former Hollywood madam who had served time in prison was suing Tom Cruise over the way he was telling his origin story, and it went nowhere because she died.
Right.
Crazy. Crazy.
Total. I mean, right? It is. I mean, some of these things you really can't make up. This life is producing, just some strange stuff. I guess we'd have to hunt down whoever that nephew was or whatever in order to verify whatever that's about.
Yeah, look, Andrew Morton spent 4 years tracking down these rumors about Tom Cruise and came up with nothing. So I don't know if it's worth it. I mean, I would like to talk to somebody that knew Toby that could maybe tell me that story about what did happen. I don't know that we can really take the words of a convicted felon that was her daughter.
There are question marks, of course. I will just also, let me just say, because I know this comes up from time to time, and for whatever it's worth from me, I have never ever questioned Tom's sexuality. The guy is as straight as they come, total straight shooter, and that is because whether he has impulses or not, as a hardcore, high level, true believing Scientologist, they ain't coming into his life. That's just how it is, and especially with him being best friends with David Miscavige, we already know how homophobic that guy is. So, and he knows every intimate detail of Tom Cruise. So, just as a point, if Tom were, David Miscavige wouldn't let him anywhere near him.
No.
So that's actually something I just thought of as a counter argument. Good point. All right. So now these last two were pretty interesting in the Scientology world this week. One of them being Alex out in the UK had a success moving the ball down the road here against St. Hill. What happened?
Yeah, he started really causing some trouble for the East Grinstead Town Council and the Mid Sussex District Council and the Flag Land Base last year when he organized this 3-day protest. Well, we just found out that in July, Scientology's chief law firm in England, Peter Hodkin's firm, filed a request with the Mid Sussex District Council for this special protective order that would declare the space around St. Hill a non-demonstration area for 3 years. And it's just amazing. And the sort of the history of it is, I think this is a law that was designed to help out, for example, abortion clinics that were having these terrible demonstrations and that women couldn't get into. So they divide, look, we're going to design this area. Police can arrest people there in for things that they couldn't arrest them in other places just because they, it's a contentious area. So they've got this law that if the local police, local district agree, you can create this space where you can't have protests. So Scientology wants that, and they want it in place right now for the October IAS gala. Well, Alex found out about that, and also found out that the Mid Sussex District Council, which is kind of the sort of like a county supervisor level in the United States, they're nervous about it. Very obviously, we actually got the document they posted on their website, and it says that not so fast. What we'll do is this year we'll take data about what happens at the gala, to consider this for next year. So they're not getting rushed into anything. And they actually said in the document that there's national and international interest. Yeah, like the Underground Bunker and the Daily Mail and all the other people that have been covering the protests and stuff. So they know they're under a microscope right now, and they're not going to rush into anything. So Scientology is probably not very happy that they're not going to get it this year. But I think it's kind of scary that they're considering it at all, because if they do set one in place in 2025, it'll be there for a minimum of 3 years, and there'll be no protesting allowed outside this multi-billion-dollar international organization. I mean, come on, that's who you're going to protect? It's insane. So that was good that Alex found out about that. And he's going to be keeping a very close eye on that. The other thing that he had a real victory on was that he noticed that in order to make it difficult to demonstrate and protest outside of St. Hill, that the Scientologists had planted a hedge on land they didn't own. The public right away there by the road, so where normally pedestrians could walk, they had planted a hedge, put in fencing, and he brought it to the attention of the highways department, and they realized he was right, and they're not happy about it. And they have now, the highways department has now notified Scientology that they need to remove it, and they're giving them a certain amount of time. So the hedge will still be there during this year's IS gala. But very shortly afterwards, if Scientology does not remove it themselves, the highways department is going to remove it and then build them. So a pretty good result for Alex just by pointing this out. Really great victory he had there. The other thing he pointed out was that, they put up that giant tent for the IAS, and he's so good at looking up local regulations. It turns out that if even if it's just a temporary structure, if it's going to be there for more than 28 days, they have to have permitting, and they hadn't applied for any, and it had already been 28 days. So he pointed that out to the local officials, and they were like, "Yeah, but it's coming down later, so we're not going to do anything." So he was unhappy about that. But it's fun to see the way he thinks of things to bring up. He's, as an activist, he's so he thinks this stuff through, does a great job. We think the IAS gala is going to be either the weekend of October 11 or October 18, which is just around the corner, Chris, and we still haven't seen any flyers, any mailers, nothing. And Scientology is trying so hard to keep a lid on the date. That's got to be a hassle for Scientologists themselves. I mean, you've got people in America that are probably going to want to go to that thing. Have they even been told the date? Maybe they have, and they've been very good at keeping a secret. But I think Alex's best guess is October 11th, and that's just a week and a half away.
Wow. That is an interesting point about that. And if they can't get what they want, Miscavige might just have a hissy fit. I mean, he was personally disrupted by Alex.
That's right.
Last year.
Yeah.
Right? He was going to open a building on the St. Hill property for the staff training, and he chickened out and had Aaron Banks do it because Alex was literally standing there.
Right. But, if you look at the video of this protest, it was well done. They had good signage. It was very clear what they were saying. It wasn't disruptive. They were well off the property. So for Scientology to be moaning and complaining that it was disruptive and it was religious bigotry and all this stuff, it's just so insane.
No, it's just another extension of rights for me, not for thee.
Yeah.
They just don't recognize human rights, and it's crazy because they just won't shut up about human rights. But then when it comes to actually, like the right to protest, that's a human right. Yeah. So and they, of course, they don't care. Yeah. Keep going, Alex. You're doing great. All right. And then finally, the last story was real worrying for a lot of people this week, and that was Hurricane Helene in Florida. What did we see in the Scientology facilities out there?
Yeah, it looked like, once again, the hurricane was not going to hit the Tampa area, and it instead, went north towards the Panhandle and missed Tampa Bay by about 120 miles or something. And then it was a direct hit on the Panhandle of Florida and up into Georgia and North Carolina. But the way hurricanes in this area work is that the eastern side often gets the worst of that, storm surge and wind. And they had record storm surge in Tampa Bay, even though the eye of the hurricane missed them by more than 100 miles. These were absolutely the top records for storm surge in Clearwater, in Pinellas County. And the damage is just terrible. The beach has just really changed overnight. People died, people drowned. I heard that the sandcastle definitely was getting battered on the intercoastal, but I think the Fort Harrison Hotel and the Flag Building and the little Potemkin Village they have there, a little north of that, I think they're all well enough inland that they didn't have any kind of flooding or anything like that. One of my readers went by and said that the Fort Harrison had their metal window covers up. So I don't think I think Scientology came through okay. But yeah, I was concerned about my readers, and we definitely heard from some people. I reached out to Mike Rinder, and he let me know that they were out of power, but they were okay and had some branches down, but no flooding. So yeah, it's the pictures are just awful, especially up in North Carolina in the mountains. The flooding's incredible. So we're just hoping to hear from more of the folks that we know, and hopefully they're getting the help they need. I back in 2005, I went through Wilma, which is one of the most powerful hurricanes of all time. And I was out of power for like a week, 10 days, something like that. And it's not fun.
Wow.
It's not
Ooh.
fun.
Mm-mm.
So
Mm-mm.
I'm sure
Wow.
they're going through a tough time.
Wow. Straight back to the dark ages for a week. Jesus. Yeah, and of course, nobody is wishing anybody a hard time here when it comes to natural disasters. Let's be super clear, right? We don't want loss of life or any of that in the Scientology crowd or not. But when their operations are disrupted, well, we're a little okay with that. And
I didn't think about that. It might be a while before they can take some new flights in for some OTs.
Yeah, exactly.
You might have to go to St. Hill for a while, folks.
Yeah, maybe. I also saw some volunteer minister photo ops being taken, some branches being picked up and stuff like that. I didn't see anything with guys in yellow shirts actually doing real flood pickup, cleanup stuff. So seemed kind of photo oppy to me from what I saw. Pretty usual for Scientology and their disaster relief. All right, well, that's what we had for this week, folks. It was an interesting week, some ups and downs. What, Tony, do you think we're going to see this next week? Any previews?
Got some stuff working. I'm trying to think if there's anything I can tease. I don't think I have anything I can tease just yet.
Fair enough. Well, we always get the good stuff. In fact, Tony's Substack is right there on the screen in front of you under his name there. Go to it, sign up, get your subscriptions, get your daily notifications rather, and check in with us on Monday for the weekly wrap up. All right, folks, see you next week. Bye-bye.